Today, and I want to thank you, and I'll introduce everyone around the table, that we don't need any more resource limitations conversations. We need to use the power of a public health and a state of emergency to access different levers, different resources, and different opportunities to keep New Mexicans safe. So that's what's changed today, and we're going to keep doing this work very closely until we see dramatic additional productive changes in the state. What I have in the public health order is not agreed to by every member sitting at this table. So in this public health order, which is effective today, September 8th, which lasts 30 days, and then we'll, like all the other public health orders, we will either amend or renew or adjust.
So you heard that, right? Amend, renew, or adjust. Ending it wasn't one of her possibilities. 2 weeks to flatten the curve.
Depending upon where we are. So effective immediately, no person other than a law enforcement officer or licensed security officer shall possess a firearm, either openly or concealed, within cities or counties, averaging 1,000 or more violent crimes per 100,000, and more than 90 firearm-related.
Now, just to stop for a moment here, all of these details she's given here, the criteria, they don't mean anything. Doesn't mean anything. Don't let that like, oh well, it's just going to be in these places with this. No, it can't happen anywhere. If it happens in one place, if it happens in one little backwater town, it can happen in the next, and that means it can happen to you. Right? You hear Trump say this all the time. If they can do this to me, they can do this to you. And that's true. It sets precedent.
Emergency department visits. So to put that in sort of a layman's terms, for 30 days in Albuquerque and Bernalillo County, it's the only place that meets both those standards. Statewide order, but only one place meets both criteria, where we have far too many ER gunshot visits and we have far too many crimes involving firearms. We are suspending open and concealed carry.
Suspending open and concealed carry. All right, so there are the emergency proclamation orders. There is what it entails. I want to jump ahead here, and I'll come back, but I want to jump ahead to the 10-minute mark, the 10-minute and 30-second mark, because here is where she addresses constitutional concerns. I want to come back to some other points here in just a minute, but let's see. Here is where she is asked by whoever's in the room. I don't know who it is. It could be somebody from the press, but he challenges her pretty hard on is this not right? This is clearly unconstitutional. She knows it's unconstitutional. She doesn't care. Remember, there are two separate Americas, and this governor is operating according to the progressive, or what's known today as the liberal order. It's not liberal in the classic sense, but we'll call it the progressive order just to keep it nice and tidy. But so here's that question. Is this not unconstitutional? Why do you think you can do this?
The real criminals.
Last follow-up.
Yeah.
But
your point is valid.
You took an oath to the Constitution. Isn't it unconstitutional to say you cannot exercise your carry license?
With one exception, and that is if there's an emergency.
I'm going to stop it right there. Is this not unconstitutional? She knows it is, and then she offers this with one exception. If I declare an emergency, this is something I can do. In fact, I can dictate. Is there really an emergency? No, I don't think what's happening there in Albuquerque fits the description of an emergency. It's tragic. She goes on here.
And I've declared an emergency for a temporary amount of time, I can invoke additional powers.
Invoke additional. Wow, she's like she's a witch or a warlock. She's a supernatural being. She can invoke things into existence that don't in fact exist. Now it is a fact that emergency powers, and this whole idea of taking of emergency powers. What in the world is that? How did it ever happen that let's just say the federal government? How did it ever happen that the federal government had the power? They did. This is not a constitutional thing. It's not a constitutional power. This is something that had to be acquired, kind of like a disease. And this is what we mean by the Civil Rights Act of 1964. There might be other examples of how this was brought in, but we've focused for now on the Civil Rights Act of 1964, because what really happened was, in a very specific place, Mississippi and Alabama in the South, there was a very specific thing happening, and it was called segregation. It was called racial discrimination. But the laws that were in place in places like Mississippi and Alabama were laws that were created democratically. The people in those areas voted for it. Right or wrong, whether you like them or not, they voted for them. Okay, so how do you destroy something that laws that were arrived at in a democratic process where everybody who lives there decided they wanted it? Well, you have to give the federal government the power to go in there and abolish things or overturn things, and essentially that's what happened. And it was supposed to just be for a little while, for a short period of time in one place, kind of like 30 days in Albuquerque. And then after we've squashed segregation and we've ended racism, then we just won't do that. We won't need to use those special powers anymore. How'd that work out? Well, the way that worked out is it just kept on snowballing over the years, over the decades, to the point now we have this. Now we're really in a quandary, right? When did we ever think that the federal government would think that it had even the ability, the authority to redefine or de-define marriage? Well, they do. They do think that.
No constitutional right, in my view, including my oath, is intended to be absolute.
All right, so no constitutional right is intended to be absolute. That's not, you see, that's not constitutional, because what are known as universal, God-given rights are absolute. They're inalienable. What that means is you can't give them away. You can't lose them. Right? You could go to prison. You could break the law and go to prison, and you could lose your right to move about freely. That's something, right? That's an example of a way you could lose your rights, but you can always get them back. Right? We call that paying your debt to society here. We can debate that whole thing too. But there certainly are absolute rights. There are rights. The whole idea about rights is in the original Constitution of 1788, the founders set up a system of government under the understanding, the self-evident truth that all men are created equal, and that they have inherent human rights. In other words, when you're born into this world, there are rights that you have that aren't given to you by some government. They're not given to you or taken away from you by Governor Grisham of New Mexico. They're inherent, they're self-evident, they're universal, they're transcendent. life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, or private property. These are absolute rights. She would like for you to believe that they're not absolute. And where she gets that idea, this whole progressive movement, really kind of beginning with Woodrow Wilson in the early 20s, early 1920s. So let's see, I think we've got left here 11 minutes.
There are restrictions on free speech. There are restrictions on my freedoms. In this emergency, this 11-year-old and all these parents who have lost all these children.
There you go. There's the appeal, right? Surely you don't believe that someone's constitutional rights are more important than that 11-year-old's life. How about that? Now that's devious. That's deceptive. That's not an argument on law. That's an argument on how do you feel. How do you feel about this? That's got nothing to do with constitutionality or legality or lawfulness. Let me just more appropriately, lawfulness. How you feel about it, it's tragedy and people feel awful about it, I'm sure, but it's got nothing to do with someone's constitutional rights. Because she's upset and good and pissed off about it, doesn't mean that she gets to do whatever she wants to do. She says some very interesting things. She's going to say, I've declared an emergency. No constitutional rights are absolute. And then she's going to say, if I'm unsafe, somebody should do something. Why? Why? Someone should come to your defense if you're unsafe. Anyway, she's saying that safety is the highest good. Let me tell you something. If safety is the highest good, and everybody agrees to that, if anybody's unsafe, we're all unsafe, and we need to lock down. We need to just give up, willingly forfeit, which, again, you can't give up your inalienable rights. Here's what it means to be free. Those of you who've watched this for a while, you've heard this before, but I got to say it again. What it means to actually be free. Doesn't matter where you are, where you live, under what system you live under. You know what your God-given rights are. You have the God-given right to move about freely. But when you're living in a society like ours, we have agreements, policies, and rights with property rights. So we don't try not to infringe on other people's rights. It's a libertarian principle, right? You just move about freely and do what you like, but don't harm other people. Don't infringe on their rights or their property. But this idea that people have to be kept safe, this is a different constitution. It's a different system of government.
They deserve my attention to have the debate about whether or not in an emergency we can create a safer environment. Because what about their constitutional rights? I took an oath to uphold those too. And if we ignore this growing problem without being bold, I've said to every other New Mexican, your rights are subrogated to theirs. And they are not, in my view.
I mean, how about this? How about everyone's rights? How about all men are created equal? And when I say men, I mean people, persons, are created equal. When someone breaks the law, then the state gets to do what it does. But until somebody breaks the law, their constitutional rights are not infringed on by anybody, especially the state. If you remember, we talk about this a lot, the biblical concept of authority. There are three, there could be a fourth, but three: the state, the family, and the church. The state doesn't tell the church what to do. The church doesn't tell the state what to do. State doesn't tell the family what to do. The family doesn't tell the state or the church what to do. There is overlap. If someone who is a member of the church, we're talking about the universal church, if a Christian breaks the law of the land, then the state, then that person is delivered over to the state so the state can do what it does. And what does the state do? Punishes the wicked, and protects the good. The biblical understanding of civilization is that the state is there to do just that, to punish the wicked and to protect the good. In the Christian understanding, it's to protect the good so that the gospel can go forward. That's the law of the land here, the one that's enshrined, because that was the principles of those people who first came here and set up their. They had compacts and constitutions and systems of government for the ship on the way over here. For when they got here in their colonies, they had, and these systems of government were what our Constitution was based on. So I wonder if this is the governor says that safety is a right. Well, let's challenge that. If everyone gets to feel safe, okay, look, I'm a gun owner, I'm a concealed carrier in Albuquerque. If I'm walking through Albuquerque and I don't get to carry my sidearm, I don't feel safe. You see how silly it is. Safety's not a right. Freedom implies risk. You might be unsafe at some point. Right? The governor says safety is a right, but your right to self-defense against a violent attacker who might be breaking the rules and carrying a gun, that's not a right anymore. So she just shifted it over here on these people for a while. Right, she says some rights are more important than others. That's the case she makes. She's wrong, and she knows she's wrong. She knows good and well that she's wrong.
Goes exactly as you're hoping. You win any challenges to it. You get data that looks really good for the whole thing. I mean, what's after that? What would you hope to follow?
I would hope that data, if this holds and it works, then we make a decision whether we can remove the order if the public emergency and the epidemic is over. I bet it's not over in 30 days.
The epidemic. I don't know if you can tell her face. She's well aware. She knows she's having a laugh. She knows good and well that what she's doing is wrong. She knows it's illegal. But for some reason, she's arrogant enough to believe that she doesn't. She's not going to be held accountable for this. If this holds, she says, that means she has no plans of removing this order. She's put it out there. She's never going to remove it. It'll have to be taken down by the courts. It'll have to be overthrown, stricken down, whatever. It'll have to be removed. She says, this is the power I have. I can dictate. Listen to this.
So I would guess this group would ask us to modify, to use the data, to identify additional strategies, and to re-execute the order. But these are all things I can't answer yet. Again, the beauty for me is this is the power I have. It allows me to dictate to hospitals, although they're supposed to.
Gotta stop it there, don't we? This is the power I have. I get to dictate. You wonder if she really hears what she's saying. Does she even know what she's actually saying out loud, or is she well aware of it and just is that arrogant? Has that little regard and respect for the actual oath she took. Right? This makes her a liar. You don't like to call somebody a liar. But if she stands there, sits there, and says that she gets to do what she wants, but she took this oath to uphold the Constitution, then she's duplicitous. She's deceitful.
To be doing it, but make it really clear, they have to report information to us about gunshot victims.
Yeah, see something, say something.
A market impact as well, but if it doesn't, something else is coming. Enough is enough.
Yeah.
Enough is enough.
You mentioned.
Did you catch that? Enough is enough. If this doesn't hold, something else is coming. Something else is coming, because enough is enough. Enough what? Enough people having rights? Enough people having inalienable rights? We can't allow that. There's enough of that. Enough is enough when it comes to people and their silly absolute rights. This lady's a tyrant. And I think she knows it.
They're suspending.
The question is why? Why do they believe they can do this? Because until we start putting people in prison for violating citizens' inalienable rights, they're not going to stop. They're going to keep locking things down and requiring people to get jabs and wear masks and do silly stuff like this.
Open and concealed carry.
All right, we saw that there.
The purpose is to try.
Suspend and open. Okay, so here's another one. Yeah, this was that we need to reconsider. Listen to this part. We need to reconsider all these other rights. All right, we've got to reconsider the idea that people think they have rights altogether, and we've got to do that to keep kids safe.
I think it's time we have a really strong debate about all the other constitutional rights. No one right now in New Mexico, and particularly in Albuquerque, is safe in a movie theater, at a park, at a school, at a grocery store, at an isotopes game, at the university, at the grocery store, I think I said, getting your prescriptions, at work. You just aren't safe. I can't guarantee it, and neither can the men and the women.
It's not her job to guarantee that people are safe. It's not part of her oath. There's nothing in the Constitution of the United States or New Mexico that says it's her duty to guarantee everyone is safe. That's just a feeling she has. That's a feeling she has. I would submit to you that now I'm going to tread on some dicey ground for a moment, but I would ask you to, just come with me on this journey for a minute. I think women can be strong leaders. The Bible has examples of that. We see that in the Bible. So yeah, women can be strong leaders, but there's a difference. Right? God created us male and female, and He created us differently. We are equal before God, but different. We're not equal in our strength, but we're complementary in our strengths and weaknesses. And so, whereas a male leader in this, I'm saying that there are males are better leaders. We look around you. It's the guys who got us into this mess to start with. But I'm just saying that here in this case, I'm going to try to give her the benefit of the doubt. It could be the case that as I don't know if she's a mother, but could be as a woman. If we're giving her the benefit of the doubt, this could be her instinct just to protect at all costs. Look, we just got to shut everything down because we got to keep safe, right? Because that would be the female's goal in the family, right? To nurture the family, to nurture the kids, to nurture the family, to care for personal care and encouragement and nurturing and protection in the home, within the home. It would be the male's responsibility to go out, procure and acquire and all that, and bring back, speaking generally. I don't know if that has anything. If that's, I'm just thinking on my feet here. I don't think that's what's happening here. I'm just trying to give her the benefit of the doubt. Is it her instinct? Would this be more common for a female governor? I don't know. It's the first time anybody's done this, but I'll bet you it won't be the last. All right. So she said there she can't guarantee everyone's safety. That's scary talk there, because nobody can ever guarantee anyone's safety. If the government was going to guarantee your safety, they would have to lock you into a cubicle and never let you out. When we're talking about security and safety, who are the people in our society who are the most secure, who have the highest level of security? Those would be prisoners. Because when you move to the ultimate state of security, you are a prisoner. That's what this is. That's where this leads. How's it going to be enforced? It can't be enforced, first of all. And you've heard from law enforcement in the area, they're not going to, some of the guys in neighboring areas, they're not going to be enforcing it themselves. And it's like, I think it's $5,000, the civil penalty. The civil penalties is what it is, a fine of up to $5,000. A misdemeanor is what it is. But, right, it's the first step. Basically, she just wants to be able to arrest anyone at any time for any reason. Now, 7-minute mark.
Is that if everyone did it and I wasn't legally challenged, you would have fewer risks on the street. And I could safely say to every New Mexican, and particularly those folks living in Albuquerque and Bernalillo County, I believe that you're safer for the next 30 days. We'll
Yeah, why? Why is that? What is she going to say? Why is that?
have to wait and see. But that.
Why would she assume that people are safer for the next 30 days? Because we don't know what her definition of safe even is. She thinks that because people can't carry that the citizens who are typically the ones who obey the law and obey the gun laws, they don't get to carry now, so magically the criminals are going to obey it too. There's not going to be any guns in Albuquerque. Another guy here asks her, why not just enforce the law? This guy asked some good questions.
These examples you cited are crimes. Kids shooting at other kids, shooting from cars. So what's the value of the civil order? Why not just do better law enforcement? Both.
The value of the order is that it gives me three things. One, it says it's a statewide issue and it's a message to everyone to start leveraging their resources and arresting people. Two, the jurisdictions come at this, including with the DOJ restrictions, differently.
But arresting people for what? The incident that brought all this on was a road rage incident where people just went crazy and fired off some rounds, and tragically, a 11-year-old boy was in the crossfire. Obviously, you're going to arrest somebody when that happens. But who is she wanting to arrest before it happens? What is this, right? But she says there, it sends a message. Why not just enforce the law, the guy says. You don't need an emergency decree. You've got some agenda here, is what he's saying, really. She says, no, it sends a message. So she's trying to send a message. That's exactly what she's doing. She doesn't mind telling you what she's up to. She's not concealing anything. That's what's so useful about this. I think that what this lady has done is that she has, she has essentially let the cat out of the bag. She explains that agencies and organizations must cooperate with her agenda. Her agenda. Not the law of the land, not what is best for them, her agenda, not the people's agenda. So she says here at this, let's see, a couple more minutes. She's going to say here, I'm willing to do anything and everything. If you're not horrified by this, something's wrong with you.
Without the leveraging and the additional resources, arresting, and where do they go? We got to make sure that everyone is bumping up their services. It's a message to the Metropolitan Detention Center. It's a message to the HMOs. You better figure out treatment. We have been sort of stalled out, to your point. This order basically says, stop stalling out, and to your point, just arrest everyone. Well, I also have to have the ability, I can't arrest everyone. There are literally too many people to arrest.
Well,
this would allow us.
If someone's got a concealed carry permit in Albuquerque walking down a public street, they're not going to get arrested.
I can make the point that maybe they should be.
Maybe they should be. It's not her job, is it? That's I had to put the glasses on here because my hair's giving me a hard time. Maybe they should be. Maybe the people who are walking around obeying the law, maybe they should be arrested. What she's saying there is maybe we should just take these laws, maybe we should just remove concealed carry altogether. She says, I'm willing to do anything and everything that's evidence-based. She doesn't care about evidence. Her emergency order, there's no evidence to follow. She didn't make this decision based on any evidence.
Willing to do anything and everything within a shred of evidence-based effort. Because if you're not horrified that on any street corner in too many cities in New Mexico, there is someone with a gun sticking out of their waist or their belt. And I'll tell you, if you're a young person, you're not allowed to have a handgun.
Well, it's a crime already.
I got it. But we won't be able to arrest all of them. So imagine, just in a perfect world,
In a perfect
if this
world.
is upheld, it gives all of these police officers the ability to focus on the real criminals.
There you go. Focus on the real criminal. Because in a perfect world, because that's the idea here, they want you to think that it's their job to create for you a perfect world. And their definition of perfect world is no danger, no risk anywhere at all. And the only way to achieve that is to lock you down. Right, Jerry? If you're not horrified by this, the implication is something's wrong with you. This gives us the opportunity to focus on the real criminals. How? How does it do that? The real criminals don't care about your misdemeanor. So it's now impossible to commit gun crime in Albuquerque. Everybody now is guaranteed to be safe. Right? That's what she... Let's give her some applause. Good job. Good job. But there's no definition of safety. No definition of what it means to be safe. So it's arbitrary. Just like the mandates, just like the lockdowns and the masks, and requiring who is required to take a jab. It was all arbitrary. In other words, there's no substance underneath the requirement. It's just what she wants to do because emotion. It's another arbitrary decree that can be extended indefinitely because there's no way to determine how safe somebody feels. Right? I like what James Freeman had to say here about it. Listen to just a couple minutes of this.
The beauty for me is this is the power I have. It allows me to dictate. It allows me to dictate.
Hey everybody, it's James Freeman, and today I want to talk about the elected sheriffs throughout the state of New Mexico who are speaking out against the governor's unconstitutional order saying that she wants to outlaw the carry of all firearms in the state of New Mexico. Elected sheriffs throughout the state, including Bernalillo County Sheriff John Allen, are saying that they won't enforce the order. John Allen even held a press conference today to let the public know that he won't enforce the order. During the press conference, he articulates that the reason he won't uphold it is because it's blatantly unconstitutional on its face, and that he swore an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution. But I would urge you as a people to stop listening to his BS lip service and pay attention to what he's actually saying. He has now publicly admitted that he knows that the governor's order is blatantly unconstitutional on its face. He's also publicly admitted that he swore an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution against all enemies, Democrat and foreign and domestic. Now that oath doesn't just say, I personally won't violate the Constitution. It says, I will uphold and defend the Constitution. That means it's not just his duty not to enforce this rule, but it is his duty to arrest anyone who does. Now, I understand that this is a very difficult position for him to be in because we've been told that it will be state police officers who will enforce this. That makes it the sheriff's duty to arrest and charge state police officers. Now, I'm not saying this is an easy position to be in, and I do not envy his position, but I am not the one who swore the oath to do this. He is. I believe it's time for each and every one of us to reach out to him and tell him that is enough of your political BS and your lip service. It is time for you to act and actually uphold your oath and actually defend the Constitution rather than sitting by and watching while others destroy it. And if you're not going to uphold the oath, at least go back into the courtroom and write a new oath to swear to, such as, I swear not to violate the Constitution myself, but I swear to sit idly by while others do. Now I want to address the entire law enforcement community that was present at the governor's address, who said that they didn't agree with her executive order, but who still sat around the table with her. I sit around tables all the time with people I don't completely agree with. Just this weekend, I sat with some people who believed that Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham only deserves 1 year in prison for this, while others believe she deserves 5 years, others believe she deserves 10 years, and others will seek the death penalty. And while we all disagreed on exactly what the consequence should be for the governor, we did all agree that everyone should be entitled to a fair trial in front of a jury of their peers, and that Governor Grisham should be entitled to this as well. Now, had there been a single person at the table that decided that they wanted to carry out punishment without due process that every one of us are entitled to, myself and many others would have stood right up and walked out, because that's wrong. Because sitting at a table and discussing things with people that we disagree with is a good thing. But sitting around a table showing support for somebody who is claiming that they are going to intentionally and maliciously violate the rights of every single person in the entire state without due process is something completely different. You don't even sit down and entertain a person who wants to bring something like this to the table. You get up and you walk out. And if you don't, you're showing the world by your actions rather than your words that you are okay with it. Not a single law enforcement official at that table got up and walked out, and every one of them knew what was written in that order. Not a single law enforcement official at that press conference table spoke out against the governor. Not until a few days later, after major backlash from around the entire nation, did these law enforcement officials start speaking up. You are supposed to be leaders. You are supposed to be the first to say no, not the last.
I like it though. I agree with everything that James is saying here. But I do like it that it was the citizens, some that the citizens did actually speak up, because when we got corrupt officials, it takes citizens. It takes an informed citizenry. It's a republic if you can keep it. Right? It's not up to those officials. It's up to us, right? So I like what James got to say here. This is he knows his stuff, right? If you've never checked out his channel, he goes around doing law enforcement audits. It's where you just go into police departments or municipal buildings, public places, and hold them accountable. Show up in video in the public, and you see people come out and start telling you can't do that here. Yeah, I can do this here, and you challenge them to show you the statute and all. Auditing police stops, traffic stops, going up with the camera and videoing it while it's happening. Something that you can do and should do, and we need more of it. So I appreciate that these guys are doing this. I don't always agree with their approach, but there's a reason that they're so caustic and confrontational with these officers a lot of times, and that's because that's what these officers have. That's what some of these officers have. That's what they do. That's what they're known to do. They are aggressive and overbearing, and ask things of citizens in the public that they ought not. You don't have to identify yourself unless you're being charged or unless you're being investigated in some way for a crime. So I appreciate that these guys do this, and I agree with everything you just said here about the governor. I think it's a great point that all the people sitting around that table, ostensibly there were people there that didn't agree with her. Well, this is not a disagreement about whether or not we're going to have chocolate or vanilla ice cream for the office party. This is a violation of the civil rights of the citizens of New Mexico, specifically those who live in the city of Albuquerque or any citizens that travel in there. Doesn't matter if you carry a gun or not. Doesn't matter if you have a concealed carry permit or not. That's another ridiculous. A permit. The government's going to allow you, tell you when and where you can carry your weapons. How in the world are we ever supposed to defend ourselves against a tyrannical government if they tell us when and where we can have our guns? It's ridiculous. So, appreciate James here. That was good. I'll stop it right there so I don't get take too long here. Now, today, my lovely wife Summer has released for us a couple. Well, it was one article, but it was so long that it's in two parts. That's my fault. But it's the America's Secret Constitution, how the Civil Rights Act of 1964 empowered the progressive takeover of America, or of the nation. It's pretty long, but it's a complicated topic. Now, today I meant to be on here with you guys a lot earlier today, but I got into writing a follow-up, because this one I was writing last week, and so then this whole thing happened with Governor Grisham, and now this is completely relevant. So I need to write another one as a follow-up to explain what she's done and relate it to this article that describes how from 1964 onward we've had this diversion in two separate really systems of government. Really a secret constitution. We've got shadow governments, more than one. Let's just be clear about that. More than one shadow government. A shadow government really is just whenever a group of conspirators get together and they push something through, let's just say the executive branch with the president's stamp on it, like an executive order, and they're able to make policy and law that way. But anyway, check those out on Substack. If you've got the Armor of Truth mobile app, you can see these articles there as well. So I guess we would expect, right? We should expect no gun crime whatsoever in Albuquerque, New Mexico for the next 30 days. Now, over the weekend, there was a concealed carry rally there, and thousands of people showed up carrying in Albuquerque. So there's that. As long as I believe in the Christian principles of doing these things, yes, do that. We've got to do that. We have to call out a tyrant. But our testimony is so much stronger when we are meek or gentle, respectful, until we can't be, until we're forced not to be. Because your testimony is so much stronger when you don't look like everyone else, when you don't react the way they want you to react. But we can check. It'll be easy to check on Albuquerque over the next 30 days if somebody doesn't strike this thing down immediately, and see whether or not, right? Because listen, Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham said that she's all about evidence-based approaches. Well, here we have the opportunity to gather data and present evidence as to whether or not her little idea was, whether it produced any evidence that gives her the opportunity to make an evidence-based decision on whether or not to continue or stop. She's not gonna rescind this order. So perhaps she's inadvertently done us all a big favor with this egregious violation of every person in New Mexico's inalienable rights. Why am I keep saying that these are inalienable rights, right? Is it really your inalienable right to carry a weapon? Well, I would say yes, it is. But we don't have to go that far. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, this is the Declaration of Independence outlines these as these are known as inalienable rights. These are rights that you can't give away, you can't lose. They're with you for life. When you're born, you have them, and you carry them throughout your life. One of those, right? Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Life. I have the inalienable right of life. That means I get to protect my life. The pursuit of happiness, that's also self-defense. Liberty. Those are inalienable rights. And, when you violate the Constitution, you violate someone's inalienable rights. That is severe. In fact, a little bit later here, I think I've got for you some examples of how she can be dealt with by the law. So in New Mexico, the oath of office for public officials is given in the New Mexico Constitution, Article 20, Section 1. Let's see. I don't think I have that for you, but I do have the text. And it says this. So Michelle Grisham, she took this oath when she took office. She said, "I do solemnly swear, or affirm, as the case may be, that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution and the laws of this state, and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability. So help me God." So if you take this oath and then she said this is not absolute. My oath is not absolute. At the bottom of that oath, at the top of the oath, I do solemnly swear. And at the bottom of the oath, so help me God. This is a promise before God. This is a promise to God. Why? Because Romans 13, there is no authority except that which God has allowed, that which comes from God. All authorities in the world are there because God has allowed it. So when you violate this oath, you're sinning against God. The oath is taken by all elected and appointed officials, elected and appointed officials in the state. The purpose of the oath is to ensure that the person holding the office understands their responsibility, which is to uphold both the Constitution, U.S. Constitution, and the Constitution of the laws of New Mexico. When Governor Grisham invoked her special privilege that gives her access to extra levers of power to knowingly, openly, and admittedly violate the civil rights of every New Mexico citizen to achieve her personal crusade of guaranteeing the safety of every New Mexico citizen, she at that point breached her oath of office to uphold and protect the Constitution. No matter how important she says it is, no matter if there is a foreign army on the streets of Albuquerque, when a public official sworn to uphold the Constitution directly violates the constitutional rights of individuals under their authority, it's often termed a violation of oath of office or a breach of oath. More specifically, regarding the constitutional rights, such conduct by a public official is often referred to as a constitutional violation. This is federal. This is the highest law in the land. A violation of civil rights is what it is under the law, right? In the United States, that's what this is. For example, individuals can sue state and federal officials for such violations under 42 U.S. Code Statute 1983, which provides a remedy for the violation of federal constitutional and statutory rights by persons acting under color of state law. Now, that is what this woman is doing. She's acting under color of state law. That means that she is sitting there in a position of authority, acting as the governor, which is a lawful position where she makes lawful decisions, and she is doing something that is not lawful. She's acting under the color of state law. She's sitting there as the governor, saying that she can do this or that because she feels like she should. That's not, she's not enforcing any laws. She's not creating any laws. She's acting under color of law. That means that she is that is kind of like this. If I put a blue light on my car and I go around pulling people over, telling them I'm the law, I'm acting under color of law. That you go to prison for that. So violating the oath of office in New Mexico has some severe consequences. An elected official is not a supernatural being. They're not supernatural. They don't have the power to conjure a guarantee of safety for everyone. They don't have the power to conjure or to redefine self-evident truths. She's not above the law, and she is certainly not immune from imprisonment. And maybe that's exactly what needs to happen. Maybe this is where the example needs to be made. Because the arrogance to sit there under color of law in the office of the governor, acting in her office. She wasn't acting as a civilian here. She's acting as the governor, under cover of law, doing something unlawful. Maybe she should go to prison. Definitely she should go to prison. I would go to prison if I did it. You would. So it's not a stretch to call someone who commits a crime while wearing an Armani suit or carrying a Louis Vuitton briefcase a criminal. That's what they are. When it's Governor Grisham in New Mexico, whether it's Gavin Newsom in California, whether it's Josh Green in Hawaii, Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan, Kathy Hochul in New York, Jay Inslee in Washington, or Joe Biden, the current resident occupying the White House, all of these people I've just mentioned, including Grisham, have already violated the civil rights of citizens through arbitrary decrees. Violating civil rights is perhaps putting some of these, I just keep saying, these people need to be, there needs to be an example, or they're not going to stop. Now, for severe breaches of, of the oath of office, like malfeasance or misconduct, gross misconduct, or perhaps civil rights violations, an official can be removed from office. Officials may also be held civilly liable, right? If I'm a citizen of Albuquerque, and now I've been deprived of my inalienable constitutional rights because I heard her say that, and I didn't want to risk being attacked in the street by thugs wearing costumes. My constitutional rights have been deprived by her, so she can be held civilly liable by lots of people. She's not immune, especially if her actions violated someone's rights or resulted in harm to an individual group. Let's say this. Let's say I'm a citizen of Albuquerque, and during this little 30-day party that she's going to have, I'm not going to carry because I don't want for her thugs to attack me and serve and protect me to death in the street. So I don't carry. But the criminal still does, and he runs up on me and is going to carjack me or mug me, and typically I would have my weapon. I would have probably been able to defuse it, but this time I don't have it, so I get shot. And do you think that person's rights have been deprived of their right to self-defense? Don't you think, does that not sound like a very severe offense? Would you want to be in her shoes right now? That's completely legitimate. Censure or reprimand. In some cases, a public official might be formally reprimanded, smacked on the wrist, or censured by the governing body of peers. That's a formal expression of disapproval, but it doesn't necessarily entail removal from office. It just means they don't have all of the powers that they once had. Like she might not be able to get away with doing any more emergency powers if she got censured. She could be disqualified from holding future office. Could be barred from holding any future office. Might also be ethical or professional sanctions if an official is a member of a particular profession or body with its own set of standards, like some other governor's convention or something. So there are plenty of things that could happen, but this is what it is ultimately. Now, down to the foundation of it all, this sinful act, right, through the invocation and declaration of a public health emergency, under which she's openly admitted she has acted as a dictator in suspending the inalienable rights of people, is an arrogant act of tyranny. And it's another one in a long line of abuses via the special emergency powers, right? Making emergency proclamations and then doing whatever you want to do. Now, we've seen that used as a pretext for years now. The principle to take from this is necessity is the cry of all tyrants. We have to do it. We have to do this for whatever reason. We have to do this to keep people safe. We have to do this to protect the planet. That's how tyrants rule by decree. That just means to dictate, as she said. Tyrants dictate. She forces the issue. She's encouraging this new order where safety is the highest virtue. And of course, that's nothing more than a trick, because safety is not a God-given right. Safety is not a God-given right, and freedom applies, assuming risk, every day. So you can see how the governor's actions have really helped to expose their entire house of cards. All you have to do is bring it down is successfully demonstrate to the people. And you can see this in those people who are following Trump and his most rabid supporters. You can see it even in the Q crowd a little bit. They go too far, but you can see that people have they're waking up to what's really happening in the world, right? that they're using these decrees. It's not going to be that easy for them to pull it off if we hold them accountable. The call of tyrants is you must sacrifice your liberty for the safety of all, right? It's for the greater good. It's the lie of communism or totalitarianism. Safety is always being redefined. There is no definition, right? They always appeal to concepts and terms that have no solid definition. That's why she declared a public health emergency and calls it an epidemic to restrict guns. To her, a guarantee of safety or security is the highest good. Always remember, once again, don't forget it, prisoners are the most secure people on the planet. The only true form of freedom available to any member of humankind, any person alive, is found in Jesus Christ. It's one thing to be free from the heavy hand of tyrants, right? People who believe the greater good is achieved by corralling all of us like cattle. It's one thing to be free from tyrants in the world, right? It's good to be free from tyranny. But there's more. It's better to be blessed by God in all circumstances. Even if it's His will for you to suffer for a season. If we don't bless those who persecute us, and that includes those who, while they're persecuting us, not waiting until they stop, then we can't expect God's blessing to fall on us. That's Matthew 5. True earthly and true spiritual freedom means to be bold in expressing our God-given universal rights in opposition to illegitimate systems of government, illegitimate tyrants, and also be willing to accept the consequences for doing it. That's how the country was founded. America was not founded on a guarantee of safety. Was the Revolutionary War safe? This is ridiculous.